What would happen if you put 4 men and 1 woman on a confined spaceship for a year? Sounds like a Mr. Beast challenge that would go horribly wrong. Well, the game Mouthwashing covers this scenario in one of the best indie horror games I've ever played. This game doesn't have much focus on mouthwash, but instead has it as a narrative tool with the main focus on the troubles of the crew and the deep and disgusting secrets that are being kept from you. As you watch this video, I want you to try and guess what is going to happen, because initially I thought the food supply was going to run out and everyone was going to go crazy drinking mouthwash and start eating each other. I was 50% wrong, as this story is way worse than that. Booting up the game, we get the achievement, I hope this hurts. Is that directed at me or someone in the game? Anyways, we are on the Tulpa, a long-haul space freighter transporting goods, with the trip lasting more than a year. The last sentence says again, I hope this hurts. Why do you want me to suffer so badly? The game starts 0 days before the crash. There's an unknown mass located nearby that looks very sus, and we are on course to hit it unless we make a slight adjustment to the left to avoid impact. However, instead we are made to steer the ship right into the giant asteroid. The ship starts blaring warning messages as in a few minutes it will crash. 4,000 credits are also deducted from the navigation team because the failure of the navigational staff. There's a locked red button on the panel which will deactivate the autopilot that is trying to divert the ship from crashing. Getting up from the chair, we can get the key to unlock it and disengage the autopilot. The crash is now imminent. Leaving the cockpit, we can start to explore the ship where things start to get a bit surreal. Hallways are lined with posters of Polly, the mascot for the company we are working for, Pony Express. One of the doors is locked and turning around, we are confronted by a statue of them. As we turn around and go back, we can start to hear a baby cry, with the corridor taking on a different form and the quantity of posters increasing. The ship starts to break down and we reach another dead end. Turning around, we are jump scared by a deformed statue of Polly. We jump to 2 months after the initial crash and are introduced to most of the crew. We play as Jimmy and sit at a table with Swansea, Anya and Daisuke. They are discussing finding a way into the cargo hold to see if the stuff they were transporting could be useful for their survival. Swansea doesn't like the idea as it might dock more pay until Anya says how the captain bypass scanner should work. Jimmy asserts himself as the new captain and we are tasked finding the scanner. We can now talk to the crew. Talking to Daisuke, he jokes about it being soup for dinner again as that's all they have. He's also hopeful that they will be home soon and his mother will cook him some amazing food and how they have the greatest story to tell the news. Downstairs, outside of the utility room, we talk to Swansea, claiming that no one can go in as it's covered in foam that was released to cover up the exposed areas of the ship during the initial crash. We can also enter the medical bay, where Anya is, with the previous captain Curly. His skin is covered in blood and 3rd-degree burns. Legs are amputated and bandages all over. When Anya still dresses Curly as captain, Jimmy shuts her down as he doesn't believe Curly to be worthy of that title as it seems like he was the one that caused the crash in the introduction of the game. Even though Anya is the nurse, she's disturbed at giving Curly his painkillers, so Jimmy has to do it. Opening the mouth of the deformed body, we deposit some in. The sounds are disgusting, but Curly seems to have calmed down now. We can then return to Anya, who asks why would Curly do what he did. She feels nauseous after hearing Curly's gagging and then excuses herself. We find the code scanner in the cockpit and now go to the cargo doors. Scanning a sign, we get the code 4517 and now enter the cargo hold. We now go back in time to 7 days before the crash, where we now play as Curly, who is having a conversation with Anya. The conversation is about a psychiatric evaluation, as Anya is conducting Curly's. They then talk about Jimmy, and how he doesn't take them seriously, like how he said he's attracted to cartoon horses. Keep bro away from the Polly statues, that's all I'm saying. Curly tells Anya how he'll conduct Jimmy's psychic evaluation instead, which then she lets out a sigh of relief. We go to find both Jimmy and Swansea. Jimmy is outside the utility room, talking about how the ship is starting to show some wear and tear. Going inside the utility room, we find that Daisuke is trapped within the safety foam. Swansea is not pleased and has his arms crossed like a disappointed dad. We need the emergency axe to get him out, which is only accessible to the captain. A jungle beat is also playing in the background, and it's pretty cool. We can then use the axe to cut away the foam to free Daisuke. Curly tells Swansea to be more careful as this is the room with cryopods that are very important as they're possibly being a last resort life support if anything truly bad would happen on board. We leave utility and tell Jimmy to come with us to the cockpit to perform his psych evaluation. Walking to the cockpit, cockpit, things get a bit freaky. The music slows and we are led to a never-ending staircase. We descend to find ourselves standing on pipes overseeing space. We fall and land on some fleshy substance with the sky slowly getting brighter with red stars. Emergency screens start to blare at us with ladders spawning around the area. Then the sun seems to rise and we are flashed with a white light. A door appears and entering we are in the cockpit to begin Jimmy's psych evaluation. Curly asks Jimmy off the record how he's truly feeling, to which he responds saying how he's enjoying the feeling of being in control but doesn't like the way that Curly is getting all the credit due to him being captain. Curly replies saying that he doesn't believe that this career is his true calling anymore, as he believes he has done everything he has set out to do. He's top of the ladder and there's nowhere to go anymore. The conversation is interrupted by an incoming message from the higher ups. We are then given the prompt to take responsibility. Take responsibility of what? Crashing the ship? Shelves of boxes surround us, so we're most likely in the cargo hold. A TV is in the distance, playing static. Approaching, we can change the channel multiple times. It is playing some old-timey cartoons and commercials, with a huge focus on something made by Dragon Breath. It is Mouthwash. Yo, that's like the title of the game! We shift back to 2 months after the crash, with all the boxes in the cargo hold being filled with a lot of mouthwash. This is all there is, just mouthwash. Obviously the crew start to crash out, as they expected maybe food, water, anything else that might be useful. But no, it's mouthwash. Anya says even though it has alcohol content, due to the high sugar contents, they can't use it for anything medical. However, Swansea had alcohol, so grabs a bottle of mouthwash and breaks his 15 years of sobriety and guzzles it down. The chapter abruptly ends with Anya breaking down, but not in a fun way. We are now back 6 days before the crash, and tasked with breaking the news to the crew. Whatever that message that was left from the higher-ups doesn't seem to be good. However, before we can, it seems like everyone is gathered together to celebrate Curly's birthday. Well, today is definitely going to be awkward now. Even though it's our birthday, we have to make the cake because Curly being captain is the only one with the clearance to generate sweetener. In our inventory, we can also find the note from corporate with the caption saying, "After all these years, just like that," which we can only assume they are all being fired from the company. We eventually make the cake and sit at the table, where Daisuke tells us to make a speech. Jimmy realizes that something is wrong, and that is when Curly breaks the news. Jimmy does not take the news well, and mentions the previous conversation they had at the psych evaluation, so it's probably going to use this news to do something bigger. Jimmy tells Curly to cut the cake, so we pick up the knife and slowly saw into it. The game transitions to 3 months after the crash. Jimmy is sleeping on a mattress on the floor right next to Daisuke. We are tasked to check on Curly. We find him in his deformed state on the same medical bed as before. Jimmy doesn't know if Curly has had his medication, so we need to go find Anya. She's in the cockpit with Swansea, talk about something in secret. As soon as Anya realizes Jimmy is there, her entire demeanor changes, almost like she's hiding something. She also seems to be crying and trying to hide the fact from Jimmy as well. Anya hasn't given Curly his pills, so we tell her that we will do it. We grab some painkillers from the stash that is slowly becoming less and less, then open Curly's mouth so he can take his medication. He then screams in agony, almost like he's fighting back against Jimmy, crashing everywhere, finishing with crying and gagging. We are yet again told to take responsibility, but we are now playing as Jimmy, with Curly's bandaged up body sitting at the table with his birthday cake. The room is also filled with empty bottles of mouthwash, and the TV screen is destroyed. Jimmy converses with Curly, talking about the cake, how it isn't good, but makes you appreciate the better things once they are there. We are then told to find a knife, but instead, in the cockpit, we retrieve the axe. There are also eyes on the display screen watching us, Curly's eye, following our every movement. Getting back to the lounge, the massive screen also displays a giant eyeball. Curly now lays on the table instead of the cake, where we were able to cut into him. It is now 4 months after the initial crash. Jimmy is in the cargo hold, and when leaving, you can find a drunk Daisuke laying on the floor. He has been drinking the mouthwash, using the alcohol content to wash away his sorrows. Daisuke talks about how his mum found him the internship here, and how initially he was a slacker and never good at anything. He hopes she doesn't blame herself. We can then find Anya in the lounge, who is initially startled by Jimmy's sudden appearance. Jimmy asks Anya if she's going to start drinking the mouthwash, and she says she might. It will make her sick and not fix anything, but who cares? Not like there's anything else better that she can do. She then tells tells us about a medical cabinet that is trapped in the foam with extra medication, so we get up to try and get into it. However, we will need to get the axe from Swansea. We can find him drunk as well, dancing to himself in the lounge. He seems to be more passive aggressive towards Jimmy now, and instead of giving us the axe, he swings it at the screen, creating a giant crack, similar to the one in the Take Responsibility nightmare sequence. So could that mean what happened will eventually take place in the future? We grab the axe and retrieve the medical supplies, being both more painkillers and isopropyl alcohol. Anya shows up, who we have another conversation with. She doesn't want to give Curly the medication again, and asks Jimmy to do it. He gets mad and rants about how he's the only one doing stuff around here.
It's find the code scanner, then figure out the door code, get the axe, chop up the phone, but not too much, and best of all, give Curly his medicine. But I'm bearing it, I have to, because the captain has to take responsibility on this goddamn ship.
The way Jimmy addresses Anya, just the way he talks to her, is awful. He belittles her as a person, saying how she's a terrible nurse who could never get into medical school. He just doesn't seem like a nice person towards her. We then open Curly's mouth and give him his painkillers. Jimmy also confides with Curly, saying how he didn't realise how much stress he must have been going through being captain, as being in the captain's shoes now has been very tough for Jimmy. He also doesn't seem to be mad at Curly after the fact that he's the one that crashed the ship, and says that one day he will be a good captain once again. It is now 6 hours until judgment. We lock the door, and it seems Swansea is outside in a crazed state. Rushing around the cockpit, we can find a metal pipe and some rope in the utility cupboard. We can use these to construct a secure lock on the main door. There's also something else in our inventory, but it's distorted with the caption, "My hands are shaking." Swansea then breaks down the glass and tries to get in. We transition to 2 days before the crash, and are back in the perspective of Curly, who is having a conversation with Anya. He asks if she is okay. They share a nice moment with each other, discussing the giant screen and how you're able to watch the night sky. Anya then asks a simple question that can be dismissed upon reading. Why do you think Pony Express put a lock on the medical room door, but not in the sleeping quarters? Curly responds by saying, safety. They don't want people going into the medical room or cockpit and messing with anything. But why aren't there locks in the bedrooms? The crew consists of 4 men and 1 woman, and they are locked in a confined spacecraft for more than a year. Who knows what could happen? Whilst you are asleep, you are the most vulnerable. Locks are necessary whilst you're in that state. I don't blame that Anya questions this and doesn't seem to be asleep anymore. 5 months after the crash, and the space courier is starting to show more wear and tear, with mouthwash bottles piling. Daisuke appears asking for help. Anya is apparently stuck in the medical room as the door won't open. We talk to Anya, who doesn't seem to respond much. This is because she actually isn't stuck, but choosing to keep the room locked.
You were right. You were right all along. I should have done this from the beginning. I always believed that our worst moments didn't define us, didn't make us beyond repair. You think I wanted this either? Make no mistake, this isn't my worst moment. Far from it. It's the best decision I'll ever make.
Whatever she's about to do doesn't seem to be good. The only way to get in is through the utility room, a place Swansea previously said was off limits due to the amount of foam there. However, there's a vent that could lead into the medical room. We confront Swansea to grant us access. However, he is still not letting us in there, no matter what. It is now 8 hours until this apparent judgment is coming, and Daisuke is injured and covered in blood. Swansea tells Jimmy to get the last bottle of disinfectant to clean out Daisuke's wounds, but apparently Jimmy has used it to make a cocktail. What a muppet! Swansea is reasonably annoyed by the news and tells us just to try and find some more disinfectant. Going to the medical bay, the corner where Curly is completely blurred. Anya is nowhere to be seen, so we can assume that she has killed herself and the game is preventing you from seeing it right now. Going to the cargo hold, we can find a grave that subtly adds to the fact that Anya is now dead. Using the captain's scanner, we can enter the cargo hold. The scanner also reveals a blood trail leading down a long set of stairs. A blind beast, aimless and restless. You can't run from it. There is something out there with us. We have to be quiet as we walk across the platforms, as if making too much noise, this beast will get us, making us restart. It's so noisy and can be very overstimulating, but if we stand still, it will soon go away. You can actually see that it's a giant skeletal pony that looks over from above. At the end of the blood trail, we can find a Poppy mascot statue. Careful now! Don't want Jimmy getting all aroused by it, can we? In its hand is a bottle of mouthwash, and we are told to take responsibility. We pour the mouthwash on Daisuke's wounds. Anya said this would be bad because of the high sugar content, and now Daisuke is writhing in pain. We are back to before where we are trying to find a way into medical, and Jimmy and Daisuke come up with a plan to make a cocktail so Swansea will become unconscious. This will allow the two to get into the utility room and access the vent. Oops, Among Us reference, and this will lead into medical to stop Anya from doing something extreme. We make the cocktail the same way we make the cake. Combine isopropyl alcohol and some mouthwash, then add some sweetener. We give it to Swansea and disguise its intentions as a peace offering. He then collapses on the floor, allowing us to enter the utility room. It is revealed that there's barely any foam in here. Swansea lied about how severe it was. This is because the cryopods are in here, and he was keeping the fact that only one was operational to himself. Daisuke climbs into the vent, and when he gets to the other side, it seems like Anya did something very drastic, as screaming and shouting starts to be heard. It's one day before the crash, so we're back as pre-cooked Curly. We can actually see the vent in here, the one that Daisuke went through. We are tasked to find the gun. Well, that's a bit drastic. Why does Curly need a gun? Getting to the cockpit where it's located, we can find Anya on her knees, clearly in a state of panic and unrest. Curly obviously believes she's going to try to take her own life because of everyone being let go, but that isn't true. She isn't going to take her own life. She just hid the case somewhere only she knows where it could be. She also reveals the reason why she has done this. She is pregnant, but who's the father? Curly tells Anya they can fix this, and that he will talk to him, being whoever fathered the baby. Anya apparently needed the gun to protect herself. Seems like whoever's the dad will not take kindly to the news. We then leave the cockpit. We are back at 6 hours until judgment, beside a very injured Daisuke. Swansea talks to him like a grieving father.
It's alright, Daisuke. Calm down. This line of work, you could have never become like miserable old Swansea. What a tragedy. Decades of hauling ass for Pony Express. Big mighty bruiser with all his shiny tools. This is where it got me. The good life, huh? I thought you were dumber than a can of paint. Always just chewing my ear off about nothing. Useless ray of goddamn sunshine. Not an A student, career workhorse, or a force of ambition. Just a damn good kid trying his best. You could have taught an old fool like me a lot. Close your eyes, Daisuke. You monster! I could have fixed him, Swansea. I have to do everything myself. Why can't any of you just give me some time to think? How do you still not understand? It's over. End of the line. You won't suffer one more second because of your delusions. Unbelievable. Stop pretending. I know all about your plan, Swansea. I went to utility. I saw you've been hiding down there, sneaking around with that axe, telling Anya who knows what. Now this? You're making sure you're the one to get inside that cryopod. Ha! I sure did talk to Anya, but it was her telling me all sorts of things instead, wasn't it? Shouldn't a captain go down with his ship? Not that it matters anymore. I ain't got no place to be. I've got everything I could ever want right here on the ship. So go ahead and get in that pod. If you ever got found, you can tell them whatever story you'd like. You've earned it.
Jimmy gets up and we are tasked to get the gun. Clearly he needs it to protect himself against the maddened Swansea. Since Anya hid it, we can guess it would be in the medical bay, as that's where she works. Getting there, we find Anya's body laying dead on the floor. She overdosed on the remaining painkillers, coughing up her guts. The gun case is here though, that is at Curly's bed. Unlocking it, Curly starts to laugh. Something is definitely up here. Leaving the medical room, Swansea calls out to Jimmy in a bloodlusted state. The crash is now imminent in Curly's side story, and you can find a broken down Anya on her knees in the medical bay. She's apparently told the dad that she is pregnant. Anya says that they just walked away when he was told, and how she doesn't want him here anymore. Curly then leaves to discuss with the father. Who can it be? Could it be Daisuke, the young and lovable idiot who slacks off but is trying to be better? Or could it be Swansea, the married man who might have made a mistake and slept with Anya? Or could it be Jimmy, the man who we've been playing as the entire time? Heading to the outside of the control room, we find Jimmy. Curly says they can fix all of this, but Jimmy just asks what they are going to do when they get back to Earth. All of their accomplishments won't matter anymore. What do they actually talk about here? As why would having a baby ruin all their achievements? Jimmy tells Curly how this was all his responsibility and his fault. He was the one in control. Jimmy then says what would happen if no one was alive to tell the tale, and how he would take care of it. The system starts to fail and the ship is in distress. Head to the cockpit and find Jimmy on the floor. He was the one who set the navigation so the ship will hit the asteroid, not Curly. He lied to the crew saying it was Curly, as how could he say otherwise? He's in a vegetative state. Now why would he do such a thing? It can't just because he was going to be a father, could it? No, that isn't the full story. Jimmy all along has been a false narrator, telling a story full of lies. He may be the father of Anya's child, but this interaction wasn't done out of affection. Remember to before when Anya questions Curly about there not being locks on the sleeping quarters. The reason for the question is because Jimmy took advantage of this and went into Anya's room late at night and unfortunately raped her. This is why she's always so hesitant around him. This is why she can't give Curly his medication. She doesn't want to give him something by force. It reminds her of the violence she has suffered by the hands of Jimmy. When we find Anya and Swansea in the cockpit talking in secret, this is why Swansea's behaviour towards Jimmy started to become more passive aggressive, as he started to despise him. It is now 1 hour before Jimmy's judgment, and he holds Curly's pizzified body in his arms. We carry him to the lounge. We are met with a very disturbing scene, as all the corpses of the rest of the crew sit at the table. They all wake up, and Curly lays on the table like a turkey ready to be cut into. Everyone is celebrating Jimmy. This is clearly some sick and deranged delusion he has cooked up. We then cut into Curly's leg, exactly the same way as we did the cake earlier. Jimmy then starts spouting more nonsense about Curly and how he and everyone has now forgiven him, but in reality, Jimmy is the problem here, not Curly. Curly was trying to do good by everyone. He just wanted everyone to be happy, even Jimmy. The only thing Curly truly did wrong was allow Jimmy's behaviour instead of calling him out on it. Jimmy ends this segment by saying, "Let's survive." What's poetic, as everyone is either dead or in a state worse than death. It is now time for Jimmy to finally take responsibility for everything he's done. We walk through a pitch black room which has the medical bay door at the end. We enter to find it covered in blood, with the hatch now open, so we drop down. We now enter the ventilation system. Walking further along, we see Daisuke, and when approaching, he disappears, and the lights turn red, with a bloody flower laying on the floor. Carrying on, we find a vent entrance, with the note, "No turning back now." This is meant to mean how Jimmy can no longer turn back on his actions anymore. What's done is done. His choice to put Daisuke in the vents led to his death. This is also meant in the literal sense, in how we cannot turn back around, or we'll have to restart this segment. So to progress, we need to walk backwards. As we are moving backwards, you can start to see things like Daisuke's weights with hands and flowers surrounding. Moving further and further back, we find ourselves back on the ship. Opening a door leads you to falling down once again, through more pink flowers and posters of Polly. Then there is a vent with axes surrounding its entrance. We enter to traverse foamed up vents that lead to Swansea restrained to a chair. We pick up the gun that is in front of him and use it. This leads us to a graveyard, where we are able to find Daisuke's grave. Swansea is also here in his crazed state, running around with the axe, trying to sneak behind us and kill us. We have to shoot him 3 separate times. What follows is a sad scene of Jimmy shooting Swansea for real this time.
I have something to say, so shut the f up and listen. I spent 13 years half cut up to my eyeballs, drunk to put it mildly. Then suddenly I saw it, a streetlight shining in my face, 500 gigawatts with the power of God. A vision of my bloated body fell into some ditch. Scared me straight. So I got a collar shirt, mortgage, and a credit card. All the things that make a good man. I hoped I could raise my children to be better than their old man. I wanted to believe I was never one setback away from my worst self. But the truth is, discipline, drive, routine, endless aspiration to get done. A loving wife, great kids, sobriety. I'm telling you, accomplishments I've been chasing all my life. Never felt as good as I expected when I crossed the finish line. So now that we're here at the end, taking inventory, those nights spinning out my head sinking into the sofa, broken glass in my palms, bleeding dry, the funniest thing ever. Old dogs laughing and snarling on the waterbed floor, mocking the moon for daring to show its face. All nausea and wreckage and vomit and ugly cruelty. The only problem in the world, an empty bottle. Those were the best days of my life. Yeah, those were the best days of my life. I got nothing to hide, ready to face the music. I can see myself what I am, but you, a cowardly, selfish motherfucker, you can't even see it. I should have been able to protect the kid. If I could have done one thing right, I wish it had been to give him one small chance off this goddamn rock. Swansea, I'm going to fix everything. We're going to make it. F*** you.
Swansea's lifeless corpse is heeled over the chair as Jimmy has shot him in the head. We leave the utility room to walk through the corridors that get more surreal as time goes on, with the pipes starting to form and block our path. Curly's eyes start to form, with more and more appearing, watching us as we loop around the same pillar. We then find ourselves in some sort of fleshy tunnel. Blue veins can be seen spreading across. We leave through the mouth of Curly. Crossing a bridge, we find him with many pipes coming out of his skin and valves that we can turn. These allow us to change the trajectory of his digestive system. There is a TV in front of him that starts to play an old cartoon showing animal people making a cake. Clicking on the cake, we are told to take Curly's leg, the one we cut off earlier. The TV then says to feast and shows a boy eating. Turning the valves, we can try and feed Curly his own leg, but doing it wrong will result in him throwing it back up. Doing the correct order, we feed Curly his own leg. There is no food left on the ship. This is all that can be eaten now. Jimmy then seems to be walking through space, until coming across Curly, who is now on fire.
I want to go home. We are home. Why don't you finish what you started? Don't worry if anyone ever finds us, I'll still be playing the villain. You'll be the better man in the end, like you wanted. I could have stopped it. I'm taking responsibility. No, we can both be heroes. We're a team, just you and me, like we used to be. What happened was an accident. We were trapped. I made a mistake, alright? I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry, Carly.
The game transitions and tells us to take responsibility again. We pick up an ultrasound scanner and start looking into a very suggestive mound of flesh. A description even tells us to take care of it. We start to find dog-shaped organisms within the flesh mound, and every time we scan one, eyes start to develop on the mound of flesh, and then we can hear a baby cry. Screams and sirens start to play, and then something explodes out of the flesh. I Hope It Hurts starts to flash on our screen, linking back to the first achievement we ever got from the game. We walk through the vents to find a poly-centipede monster. It runs away as we get close, turns around, and when it sees us, charges and makes us restart. We have to just keep going through the vents, trying to avoid it, but in the end, you can't, and the responsibility of this child will always catch up to Jimmy. We walk down a corridor that has floating employee cards of Jimmy, Swansea, and Daisuke. You can kind of see Anya as well, but her face is always covered. We just had a guilt sequence of Daisuke, then Swansea, then Curly, and finally Jimmy impregnating Anya. However, we never have one about the death of Anya. All he was to her was a monster, someone who manipulated and took advantage of her. He never had any kind feelings towards her. We walk to find ourselves in the cargo hold, with a statue of Polly standing on top of bottles of mouthwash. Jimmy, don't you be getting any ideas now?
Pony Express is dead, and so are you. Shut up! Curly tried his best, I did too, but he's the better man. I see that now. We can both still make it. I'll take care of him and take him responsibility. Curly, Captain, I'm so sorry. Yes. Yes, I do. I f***ed up, but I can still make this right. Our worst moments don't make us.
It's the final moments before judgment. We carry Curly across the ship, all the way to the cryopod in the utility room. We place him inside the only functional one. Jimmy regrets that his actions hurt his best friend, so he's going to save him by letting him be the one who is found. But what life will Curly lead with the state his body is in? It won't be a fulfilling one. Jimmy then leaves our sight. Jimmy ends his own life, as he knows if he goes back to Earth, he would be tried for what he did to Anya. He would have to suffer the consequences. He took the easy path out. Mouthwashing is one of my favourite horror games for this year, maybe my favourite indie horror game of all time. It tackles such sensitive and dark topics in a way that keeps you guessing and shocks you at the right times. Unless you understand the subtext and put the pieces together yourself, you wouldn't understand how true of a monster Jimmy was. A manipulative man who tries to spin a story that Curly was at fault, but in truth, he was the true villain. At any point in time, he tried to manipulate the crew. He convinced Daisuke to join him on the plan to knock out Swansea, what led to his death. He took advantage of Anya and always belittled her achievements and saw her as less of a human. He even made everyone believe Curly was the bad guy because of how jealous he was of him. The only person Jimmy's manipulation didn't work on was Swansea. He always saw through the delusion. Swansea and Jimmy are two faces of the same coin. Swansea made mistakes, just like Jimmy, but he tried to be better. Jimmy just dug himself into a deeper, jealous hole. I just want to add a final note saying Swansea was never going to use the last cryopod for himself. It was going to be for Daisuke, the one crewmate that should never have been on that ship. That's why after his death, Swansea didn't care about it anymore and told Jimmy to use it if he wanted. The game is brilliant and uses metaphors and subtext to help shape the narrative, and it's so cool. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. Keep on living, have a damn good day, and bye for now.
Bitch dance and throw that ass up, blood so big I can